Hello, it's Tom and
hello
Dom from BlackToad Studio. We are here to do a little game. This is actually in preparation for the LCO, the Last Chance Open, up at our sponsors' store, Wargamesuk. Go check them out. So essentially, we decided that we've both got a couple of lists here. If you want to see what the lists are, we've already done 2 more in-depth videos on the channel, so please go and check them out if you want more list details. This is just literally going to be jumping straight into one of the actual scenarios at this tournament. So this scenario is called Seize Ground. So essentially we've got 6 objectives. So we've got one here, one underneath here, where Dom is pointing. There's another one in the centre of the board here, and there's one here, and the final one is over there. They're actually all pre-laid out, I think, very equally to make the game quite fair from that respect. And then the other thing we do is we all select 3 additional secondary objectives from a list. I will probably go through them as they come up, but basically just to give you in a nutshell, I've gone with Big Game Hunter, Titan Slayers and Behind Enemy Lines, and Dom has gone with Big Game Hunter, Headhunter and Kingslayer. We will probably say when they crop up during the game. Dom rolled off in one deployment and he managed to get he picked Dawn of War. I deployed first. However, Dom finished first, so I believe that means we're now rolling off a first turn. So Dom gets +1 to his roll.
4,
so it's a 5. So I need a 5 or a 6.
Oh,
that is not good. So, question is, Dom, would you like to go first?
Yes, Tom.
And I will attempt to seize then.
Oh, what? Oh, no!
Yeah! So there we go. I have seized that. So it's going to be the Red Scorpions turn 1 in a second. So we'll be back shortly with the movement phase. Okay, so actually before we start Red Scorpions turn 1, we just thought we'd go for the deployment, which might be quite helpful for some viewers. So over here in my force, we've got some of my aggressors hiding down on this side, along with some Primaris. That was made to show at the side of the board, get near this objective here, and also hopefully make a little run across here, potentially. We have one Contemptor at the middle here, mainly because I didn't know what to do with them. It felt like a waste hiding everything, even though, as you can see over here, there's a lot of firepower aimed this way. On this side, we have a Land Raider Helios, just sort of hanging out here with some las cannons pointing in the right direction. We had a Scout Squad hide down here. That's mainly to sort of try and make a jump onto that objective. Over here, we got a Tactical Squad, which is just waiting on this objective here as well. Also, we have the another Contemptor here, and then we have the 2 HQ slots over here, Cullen and Magister Severin Loth. Now, over to Dom's side of things. Don't know if you want to run through anything here, Dom, or you...
Yeah, okay, so over here I've got 2 squads of guard that are sitting on objectives, 1 squad here,
yep,
and 1 squad across over here, currently sitting on objectives.
Yep.
Over on the left flank, my squad of infantry I put in here to kind of prevent any deep strikers coming in behind, so hopefully that's okay. As for the centre, I put the Baneblades, quite a strong centre, hopefully able to kind of arc the fire left and right, definitely, and straight ahead. I've got support vehicles behind them. I've got the Psyker behind here, able to put his Psychic Mojo onto whichever tank requires
Lots of recipients.
Yeah. In the Trojan, we've got Company Commander and Engineer, and the Shadow Sword. Yeah, it's kind of aiming across the field. Kind of, once again, the terrain's preventing a lot.
Quite a tight deployment.
Yeah.
And also, just in case I didn't mention, I do have some Terminators and Deep Strike as well. So Cataphractii ones, just to mention that on top of that. So yeah, now we'll actually go on to Red Scorpions turn 1. Okay, so Red Scorpions, turn 1 movement. The aggressors here have shot out of cover and going this way. They advance, so they've got a 10-inch move, so eyeing up this area. The Primaris squad here stepped out of cover to get a guy into range of here. To try and get a score of 1 point for having an objective. This Contemptor's moved up slightly around this way just to get a live line of sight firing here. I don't know how much use his guns are going to be against the bigger vehicles. Over here, the Scouts have shot out of cover to grab the objective in the middle there as well. The Land Raider here has actually moved backwards to pull himself out of line of sight of one of the Baneblades on the right here, but keep a firing arc on that one. Cullen has come into line of sight as well of the middle Baneblades, I believe. Mainly because he needs to shoot at least his Hunter Killers, I'm thinking. And also over here, this Contemptor has shot out of cover. He also advanced. And then finally, the Cataphractii Terminators here deep struck into here. Deep stack. And they are ready for combat, hopefully. So now we'll move into the Psychic and shooting and see what happens. Okay, so turn 1 shooting and psychic for Scorpions. Psychically, nothing happened. I did try and put 2 abilities onto Cullen here, but it didn't work because I failed both of them. I also used a stratagem called Machine Empathy to basically remove the penalty for heavy weapons on Cullen as he moved forward to fire all 3 of his Hunter Killer missiles over at this Baneblade. And unfortunately, yeah, he didn't do anything to it. However, in another side of the coin over here, this Land Raider fired all its las cannons over and took 11 wounds off it, which is quite nice. And then got 1 more wound off it from this Primaris squad here that fired its bolt rifles into it and managed to take 1 additional wound off. Other shooting happened over here, which was this scout squad down here shot, didn't do anything. The Contempt here also shot in to the Baneblade and didn't do anything. I was going to assault over here, but I don't think it's worth trying because I can't really get there, so they're going to wait there for a turn. And we'll now move on to Guard, turn 1. All right. Okay, so here we are, turn 1 for Guard, and over here we can see a hell of a lot of movements happened. Tank's been quite brave, but to be honest, I don't think they've got anything to be that fearful about. So the 2 Baneblades have smashed through the middle here, the injured one taking the front line here, obviously keying up to try and possibly take out some Primaris or some Aggressors, or even the Contemptor down there, lots of options. This other Baneblade's pushed in here, he's got quite a few targets if you look through here, so you can see Cullen over there. You can even see, I think you can even see the Land Raider actually, so just peeking around the corner. Over this side, the poor Terminators are probably feeling a little bit, yeah, intimidated, I think, by this absolute monstrosity here of the Shadow Sword aiming down that way, but I think Cullen was probably the prime target for him. And then little bits of Guards movement here. This Guards squad lost a few men and fell back. These guys have moved into the gap to protect that there, and obviously one of the support vehicles here has come in behind, and also the Tech Priest here has run forward, along with the Salamander here who's also moved forward to possibly buff a few units.
Yeah, so he's going to be buffing this one here.
Yes.
He's going to be buffing the front one.
Yep.
The Trojan is going to be buffing the Shadow Sword.
So we'll see what they do shortly as we move on into the shooting phase, and possibly some psychic phase of the Guard. Okay, so during that shooting phase for Guard, quite successful for Dom. With all the various stratagems that were cast, there was a lot of additional to hit rolls going on. I think there's a plus. This guy was hitting on 2s at one point, which was quite nice.
So we had the Salamander command vehicle boosting him, and the Terminators that were here we used the
overlapping fields of fire.
Fields of fire. That's correct. Yeah. So this guy was then essentially hitting on a 2.
Yes.
When he was targeting this squad here.
So that was after a wound was inflicted by the Shadow Sword here.
Yeah, so the heavy bolt was fired at the Terminators, the Volcano Cannon fired him, fluffed up quite badly.
Cullen got a lot of saves, to be fair. He got a lot of 4-up invulnerables, so actually he did pretty well to survive. He only took 3 wounds in the end, so quite nice. But obviously the Terminators have died, and also sadly the Scouts got heavy bolted to death as well. Also, over here, this Contemptor has taken quite a fair bit of damage and is now currently sitting on 4 wounds left. So yeah, the Aggressors did take a bit of fire, but they all pinged off the armour from the las cannons. Las guns, I should say, not the cannons. So that is the end of the round. So I'm just going to scoot over here so you can have a look at the score sheet. And at the moment, the scores stand 4 to Dom's 8. So we'll now move on into Red Scorpions turn 2. Okay, so we roll into Red Scorpions turn 2, movement phase here. The Aggressors charged up the board. I did try to get in range with the Flamestorm cannons on the Guard squadron, but I'm afraid I'm just out, even with a re-rolled advance roll. So I've only got 1 command point left, not looking good in that particular respect. Moving over here, the Primaris have broke cover and moved forward, and I just realised I'm slightly out of coherence here, so I'm going to move him back. So they've moved out of cover to try and get all of their bolt rifles in range, just to at least shoot some stuff, because right now we need to try and get one of the super heavies off this battlefield, or we're going to have some big trouble. Now Dom is correct in his right, to surmise is going to be difficult. So the Contemptors also move forward with his 4 wounds to try and get that. I don't really fancy charging it. I have been the victim of Overwatch with characters and other things recently, and it wasn't very pretty. The Land Raider Helios here has moved up to sort of get a good firing arc on this particular Baneblade. And over here, Cullen has moved through the gap with Severin backing him up with some, hopefully some psychic shenanigans, and also this Contemptor has charged up forward this way to maybe get a charge off on that, although charging a Volcano Cannon probably not going to be very pretty either, but we'll see if we even get that option depending on how many guardsmen we can clear out of the way. So that is the shooting, sorry, the movement phase. We'll now move into psychic and shooting, and we'll come back shortly. Okay, so turn 2 shooting for Red Scorpions. Did a bit of psychic as well, just to come over here to do that. So on the front Contemptor here, I cast Might of Heroes and Veil of Time. Unfortunately, it's not going to come in 2 useful because I didn't quite get rid of all those guardsmen in the shooting phase. Cullen did his best, took out a fair whack of them, but unfortunately no other weapons in range, so nope, sadly. The Land Raider here fired another barrage at the Baneblade here, and actually I think took off 6 wounds in total in the end, so he's actually down to, was it 6? Yeah, he's down to 6 himself, so cool. Various other shots came in from over here, but didn't actually manage to do anything this time round. So yeah, shooting wise, not too impressive, but enough to do some actual damage. So we'll now move on into the assault phase and to see if this Contemptor can survive Overwatch. Okay, so assault phase, Red Scorpions. Over here, very sadly, this Dreadnought didn't make it in because it got Overwatched to absolute buggery by the by the defensive gunners on here, which get hitting on 5s. Yep. So yeah, completely destroyed. Bit sad really, but hey ho. We'll see if the next round. Oh no, that's not a good idea. Over here, however, we have a another Contemptor that made it into combat with the Guardsman because that was the only choice it had in the end. Butchered them, however, he's now sitting in front of a Shadow Sword. So we'll see how his life fares in the following round. Sadly, because of my targets dropping like flies, as in my units, it's going to be, you know, Cullen's probably in a lot of danger this turn because, yeah, there's not much else Dom really has to worry about, in my opinion, in this area of the board anyway. Probably the Land Raider is the most dangerous unit for him, but we'll see if he wants to go for the Warlord kill, I suppose. Yeah. You do, yeah. So at the end of that round, I did get a couple of points there. Basically, because I held 2 objectives, and also I killed a unit, and also I got another 8 wounds off this unit, so it gave me another Titan killer. So yeah, 3 points in total. We'll now move on into 4 points. So we'll now move on into the Guard, turn 2. So as the laughter dies down at the end of the movement phase for Guardsmen, what we were laughing about was that this tank Baneblade here was on 6 wounds, and the engines here advanced in and managed to put 1 extra wound back on it, which put it up a bracket, so it's no longer hitting on 6s. Mildly irritating from my point of view. Other than that, though, obviously you can see there's been some shuffling here with the rear Baneblade pushing through the gap, obviously trying to get a bead on Cullen over there, and also I think over here everything pretty much stayed still. Obviously the Contemptor sitting in that gap there pretty with the cannon next to his head. Whether he'll be the target, we'll soon see. Obviously these guys will stay put here just to hold on to the objective if they can. So let's see what happens in the shooting and psychic phases. So as we roll on to turn 2 for Guard, quite a lot happened this turn, so I'm just going to try and get through all of it. Down here, the aggressors have lost a man to las gunfire, which was a bit embarrassing for them, I think. I feel a bit sorry for them. I think their armour let them down. In the middle here, this Baneblade fired its main cannon over here and took off 14 wounds off this Land Raider. Absolutely abysmal saving rolls. And just the amount of shots that main cannon gets is amazing. The las cannons also fired him, but didn't manage to do anything. The heavy bolt was fired over here at the Primaris and managed to kill one of them. Moving off out into the middle here, this Baneblade fired pretty much everything it had into Cullen and took off all but 4 of its wounds. So that is pretty good going against that. I think it also had a couple of... Did it have any shots from there, Dom? Was there some las cannons in the end, or was it all at the Contemptor?
The main cannon was at the Contemptor,
which I managed to save, luckily, but he got a low roll for the number of hits, so he was quite lucky.
All the others fired at Cullen.
Yeah, and everything else fired at Cullen, so he's down to 4 whole points. 4 wounds, sorry, going back to a bit of 7th there. So, yeah, that's the shooting there. Dom informs me reliable that he has some assault going on. I think it might be over here to try and protect the Shadow Sword from these guys just hiding down here.
Yeah, so these guys are going to be charging in a minute.
So we'll be back in a minute with the results of that. Okay, so over here for turn 2 assault for Guard, the Guardsman charged in and the Guardsman died. The Contemptor pretty much wiped out all in one, with 5 of them in one round of combat, and then the morale phase finished the rest off. So that is the end of this particular round. We're just going to do a couple of points so we can see where we stand, and then we'll move on into Scorpions turn 3. Okay, so we roll into Red Scorpions turn 3, and down here this aggressor squad has piled forward, and they've got themselves in range of both this Guardsman unit and the Baneblade unit in case they want to try and put some flame power on this to try and finish it off or whatever. Over here the Land Raider has stayed put because it's in a lot of trouble anyway on 2 wounds, so I don't know how effective it's going to be this turn. Hopefully it'll try and get at least one Las Cannon off. And over here Cullen on 4 wounds is also limped around this corner towards this central part here because there's not much else he can do other than maybe challenge that Baneblade to try and finish it off. The Contemptor over here has scooted around the corner just to put as much distance between the other tanks in the game as he can and hopefully have a pop at this particular Shadow Sword. So, end of move. Oh, sorry, and also the Primaris over here have moved as far forward as possible so they get into double tap range for their bolt rifles. So, that is the end of turn 3 movement for Scorpions. Now move on to Psychic and Shooting. Okay, so we roll into the Shooting and Psychic phase for Red Scorpions turn 3. Psychic-wise, we had Veil of Time and Mighty Heroes cast onto the Dreadnought here, onto Cullen, sorry. So he's a little bit tougher, hopefully surviving in a minute when he goes into Assault phase. Shooting from the Land Raider this turn was very ineffective due to its hitting on 5, so I don't think we even took a single wound off, I think, in the end, did we? I think actually it was the Primaris that took one wound off at -1, doesn't it, in the end?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's down, took 1 wound on the Baneblade, but nothing else did any damage. The aggressors here shot into the Guardsman unit, I think took out 3 or 4 in the end.
Yeah, took 4 Guardsmen out.
Cullen over here also shot all of his weapons that he could do into this Baneblade, but didn't manage to do anything. And finally over here, the Contemptor, just hiding behind there, shot its multi-melter into the Shadow Sword and did nothing as well. So we're now really at the mercy of the assault phase and a lot of Overwatch. So let's see what happens. So over here during the assault phase for the Red Scorpions in turn 3, the Overwatch fire was far too much for the remaining Contemptor and he died. He got vaporised. I think he took 16 wounds or something silly, so it was just horrendous. And over here, however, Cullen managed to weather the storm, get in, and do 8 wounds to the Baneblade. However, a stratagem was cast for the, was it Adamantian tracks?
I know, crushed them.
Crushed them, and he managed to do 2 wounds back to him. It was a nasty little stratagem, actually, but quite cool, I suppose. So Cullen is now on 2 wounds, and currently very close to 2 Baneblades. So at the end of that turn, I'll add up my score and then we'll head on into Guard turn 3. Okay, so at the end of turn 3 movement phase for Guard, there's been a little bit of movement here. Obviously, getting out of combat with Cullen was one of the chief objectives there, and it's been done quite nicely. Moving back here, the Engineer has moved up behind this Baneblade that has also moved to give it another 2 wounds back. Yep. Pretty good. I think it's still in the lower bracket or the middle bracket.
I think it's just gone up.
Just gone up to the middle bracket, so that's quite good. Gets a little extra firepower. Over here, this is a Trojan, isn't it? Has moved up to kind of contest this objective here. Obviously, the Shadow Sword has got plenty of options on Severin there if they can get rid of Cullen over here, because obviously that's still technically the closest unit. So that is the end of the movement phase over here. We'll now see what happens during the Psychic and Shooting. Okay, so at the end of turn 3 for Guard there, unfortunately Cullen has met his demise. He took a hell of a lot of fire to go down and ended up actually with heavy bolters that killed him in the end, taking 2 wounds off from there. So yeah, not brilliant, but you know, that's where there's so many guns on that Baneblade. Over here, had a few more of the Primaris go down to multiple shots coming in. And also over here, once Cullen had gone, it gave the perfect opportunity to the Shadow Sword here to finish off Severin. Probably should have moved him around the corner earlier, then he wouldn't have been in that particular situation. So yeah, he died. So we're end of turn 3 there. We're going to tot up the points and see where we're standing, and we'll be back shortly. So we decided to wrap it up there at the end of turn 3. We have just done a brief kind of tot up of the scores there. Dom has ended up with 16, and I am on 8 at the moment. We probably would have, if we were actually playing in a tournament, say, we probably would have actually carried on right to the end. But to be honest, as this is quite late tonight, we thought we'd wrap it up there because it's not really going to show much difference. Because I think next turn I would have probably lost the majority of what I had left on the board anyway through massive firepower, because I've lost all my units that could actually soak that up. So yeah, I personally thought my list did a lot better than it did last time. And it lasted longer on the table. I don't know about you, Dom, how you thought your list did in comparison to...
Yeah, I mean, everything went to plan as such. I mean, the main force was to come up with the Bane Blades.
Yeah.
To try and survive as long as I could and just use them as a firing point. That worked.
Yeah.
The engines here did a bit of repair work. The Psyker kind of kept the ones alive that were taking the firepower. The command vehicle kind of helped whichever vehicle needed it. The Shadow Sword was good, although, like I said, the terrain was a bit of a problem.
It was a bit of against it,
so
really,
it was very limited where you were at, really. But yeah, the troops died, as troops die in the Guard Army. But they did their stuff. They did good. They did good. Yeah. And I think, from my point of view, obviously, I was reasonably impressed with Cullen. I think he held his ground very well. But, from objective-wise, I managed to hold on to the objectives I had on my side of the board. Because I had good troop choices, so they're just sitting back here quite happily. But unfortunately, just because the sheer amount of firepower, I think, is what outdid me. It just in general, because you can't, unless I could have got rid of one of those Bane Blades, which I almost did, which it would have. I think if the Contemptor got that charge off and not been overwatched to death, I think it would have just about clipped it down, and that could have made a little bit more of a different type of game towards the end. But dealing with the two in the middle, just too much firepower for my army anyway. It's just because I haven't got enough to deal with it. Cullen got in obviously over here and took off 8 wins in 1 round of combat, which is brilliant, but again, not enough to bring it down to the point, which is, If you killed one of the super heavies, that would drastically reduce my firepower. That's like a third goal.
Exactly. And that's probably the key to sort of beating that army, I think, is getting just one of them down would really... one of the Bane Blades, I think, though, because I think actually, although the Shadow Sword was quite dangerous, I think these are way more powerful just for the amount of stuff they have on them. That's the nice thing. So anyway, thank you all very much for watching. This is Tom and Dom. Back as you do. We'll see you soon.